Hey everyone, welcome to DCG Insights, where we go over current market trends. And all right, let's kick things off. So, hey Marcus, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. How are you?
Good, good. What's new?
No, just looking at what's going on in the world. So we've had a lot of things actually come since last we talked. The first thing that actually happened was start off with good news as far as on the economic front. GDP, which is gross domestic product, so essentially everything that we're doing as a country, went up 4.9% year over year. So the economy grew compared to last year 4.9%, which is a good thing. Now, a lot of that growth was in the form of companies building inventory. So I would probably guess that has something to do with Christmas. But it's still a very good thing. It did do well. So you want to give those nods where they're going. The other bit of news that we had that I think is real important and is good is inflation is still coming down. It actually beat expectations. So for those that have seen it and those that invest in the stock market, you might have saw a giant gap up in the stock market the last few days. That was tied to the GDP number and that inflation number coming in a little less hot than was expected, but it still came in at 3.2%. So for those people that are familiar with economics and the Fed goal on inflation is 2%. So they want to see 2%. So they're going to keep rates higher to get their target is a 2% inflation rate. So that 3.2, while better than, I think the peak was like 9%, almost 10. It's still 3.2. So it's still a good, 50% over the Fed target of 2%. So, which is interesting.
Yeah, no, that is good.
So, oh,
What
yeah.
what do you think is driving that increase?
Well, initially, I think that the Fed was somewhat right and somewhat wrong with as far as the inflation increase. And that is, it was right in the fact that COVID really damaged the inventory supplies. And so you couldn't find things. So the price of the things that were available just went up. The other part of it that I don't think they took into account, and this is what really drove the bus on inflation, and it's continuing, I think, to drive the bus on inflation, is the massive printing of money that the government has done. The government has just thrown a huge amount of money at when COVID happened and just overall, the government just spends, regardless of which group is in power. They seem to spend a lot of money, and the impact that has on people is quite astounding. Let me actually show you this real quick. Let's see here. I'm just going to share this real quick. This will kind of show you a little bit what I'm talking about. So if you look at this screen here, what you'll see is this is the cumulative price change since 2021. So basically coming out of COVID on the general population. And you see, look at this, you've got principal and interest on the house. Look at how much that's gone up. That's gone up 120% in just a couple years. That's driven by interest rates and, of course, home prices going up. You've got gasoline, which has come up, massive spike, but then it's dropped down. But then look, even these things, you're only talking about a 2-year window. And most of these things are hovering around 20% increases. And you can go and you can see, a lot of goods and services. If you go to the store, I'm sure you can see it, where the reality is things are much more expensive than what they were.
Right.
And so now the Fed raised rates to try to handle that, but there's going to be some negative impacts to that. And take a look at this. And this is something I think that really plays a part in for our clients and those others listening. But you look at this. This is continuing jobless claims. And so what you see is now we're at about 8 weeks, 9 weeks in a row of continuing jobless claims getting higher and higher. Now, that is something the Fed actually wants to see. So they want to see that happening.
Could you put that chart back on again?
Yeah. Let me,
so the Fed wants to see
unemployment go up.
And why is that?
And the reason for that, and just so you know, just so that people understand, this ... this is just the pre-pandemic level. So in other words, we're finally starting to cross over the before COVID, the jobless numbers that we typically have. So the Fed wants to see that, is as odd as that sounds. And the reason why they want to see that is because the way to bring down inflation is to make people have less money. And the way to have people have less money is to have them lose their job. Now, you don't want too many people to lose their job, but you want enough of them to lose their job.
The Fed wants people to have less money.
Yeah. They want to slow the economy. That's why they increase that interest rate. That's why they do a lot of the things that they do. And it's kind of, it doesn't make sense on the surface, but that's the reality. That's the reality of it, because the Fed has their own problems that they have to deal with. And here, let me show you. And this is part of the reason why. So what you're looking at now, this is the interest rate payments that the Fed makes on their debt. Okay. So here is a massive problem. You see that top, it's coming all the way up. It's hitting $1 trillion. Okay. So the Fed is paying currently $1 trillion in interest alone on the money that they have borrowed. Now, the Fed brings in about $5 trillion in taxes. And so their revenue, if you want to call it that, I don't like calling it revenue because it's taxes, but the taxes they bring in is about $5 trillion. Okay. So they have a massive problem. Now, there's two ways you can fix that massive problem. One is not spend, but maybe we can give a discount to the client or someone that can find a government that actually slowed down their spending and cut spending and didn't actually spend more money than the previous year. Even when they say they didn't spend, all that means usually is that they slowed the growth of the spending versus actual not the spending. And so what they do, the two ways you can actually solve that problem is to either get your budget in order, but that would require the politicians not to spend money, which is almost an impossibility. The other thing that you can do is you inflate it away. And that hurts people. But there's the inflation gets the debt, because if you have debt and you have inflation, how much is that debt worth? Even though the value is the same, the debt is less to you. It's like if you owned a house and it was a $500,000 mortgage, you go forward in time and you have 50% inflation. Well, guess what? You still have a $500,000 mortgage, but it's like you had a $250,000 mortgage because the money has lost half its value. And the real issue that you see, and I want to show this because I know we're doing a shorter one this time, but I want to make sure we get this in here. This is the real thing, and this is where the danger comes in. We'll kind of hit it here. So this is from the government website, and what this shows is the percentage of the revenue, the percentage that the government spends. So they spend 22% of their budget goes to Social Security. Okay? Well, here's a problem. As we keep spending, and now we're reaching $1 trillion in interest payments, within a couple years, if that trend stays the same, so within about 2 years, 3 years, we're going to be paying about 30% of our revenue of taxes brought in on interest. Because here's a massive problem that the government did, and this is a big fault of both the previous administration and the current administration. When interest rates dropped down to next to nothing, basically zero, the Fed had a golden opportunity to lock in their debt at really long interest rate environment. So they could go on 30-year treasuries, or even come out with 100-year treasuries, do something, get this debt pushed off to where it's low interest for a long term. Now, if you did that, you wouldn't be able to get the exact same quote that we did back in time, because obviously more supply means more less. You have to build the demand, so you're going to have to give a higher interest rate. But what that does is that would have locked in the debt at a low interest rate. But you know what the Fed did? All the debt is roughly about, the average life of the debt is roughly about 3 to 4 years. So within the next 2 or 3 years, our debt is going to be rolled over into new interest rate. So instead of having a debt of 1, 2, 3%, we're cruising at 5, 6%. And that's what's going to happen. And so that's going to push things further. And that's going to also push, obviously, the economics into a difficult time where we're going to have that normal investment cycle that we talked about last time, where we're going to have a recession. Don't know when, but it will come. And that's where it's very important, if you're a client of ours, to be working with your fractional CFO to think of ways you can get yourself as streamlined as possible to prepare for these events that are going to happen. Or if you're not a client, talk to us, ask us what we can do to help. And in a lot of cases, and our clients know this already, but in a lot of cases, we can do the work that a typical office of finance does. You can outsource your office of finance at a lower cost, and then that leaves you more money to be able to run the business with that, with the economic environment that we're going to be coming into. And that's a critical point to be made.
Well said. Well, thanks, Marcus, for all your insights this week. And we will talk to everyone next week.
Awesome.